Hello, welcome to tonight's show, FLoAD Conversations. We're so happy to have you join us this month of April. We missed you from last month, March. Tonight, our conversation is Ganja Green, from the Bible to emerging economics. It's sponsored by LGBT Faith Leaders of African Descent, which is an organization that connects LGBT youths to resources. We also facilitate conversations. Tonight, our special guest is Audy Peeples, the owner of Souls Ground Foods and Natural Healing. Audy Peeples was raised and born in Benton, Michigan. She lived in Chicago for 19 years, working in the legal field, while also running a DJ catering service and also serving as a personal chef, the owner of a personal chef business. She commuted from Chicago from 2008 through 2010, completing some cooking and legal commitments, while also creating food brands, Soul Ground Foods and Natural Healing. Now, Audy is back home in Michigan. Under Audy's parent company, Souls Ground Foods and Natural Healing, she is the chef owner of Souls Ground Cafe, Work It Food Truck, The Lunch Counter, and Souls Ground Gardens. She is also a licensed medical marijuana caregiver in the state of Michigan. Chef Audy has been around food her entire life, dedicating her passion for cooking at a very young age to watching her grandmother cook, while her grandfather taught her to build fertile soil and plants numerous vegetables and herbs from seeds. He not only showed her how to grow food, but also some of the most beautiful roses and gladulus. She was her grandmother's favorite flowers, which was her grandmother's favorite flowers. Audrey took that love of growing foods well into her adulthood. She entered into an intense self-study of hydroponics in the late 1990s, when it was still a relatively new growing method in the US, and the information was scarce. She taught herself how to build gardens using various hydroponic techniques and began growing food and plant medicine from this new method. When she returned home for good in 2010, she went into another deep self-study of cannabis. Soon she took the same hydroponic methods she learned for growing food and applied them to the cannabis plant. She became a licensed marijuana caregiver, which allowed her the ability to grow marijuana plants, using hydroponics for patients who had a multitude of life-threatening and debilitating ailments. Chef Audy has also successfully developed her own cannabis cuisine, in which she uses cannabis extraction methods to use in cooking and has held numerous private cannabis infusion dinner parties and events. She will be partnering with a local small commercial cannabis grower dispensary where her infused food will be featured and sold. Audrey is a cannabis consultant in the state of Michigan and was a compliance and regulatory consultant on behalf of the large commercial cannabis company, Novo, Inc., which grows and sells medical and legal marijuana in Michigan, who originates from northern Boulder, Colorado. Audy is currently the chef owner of Soul's Ground Cafe in the downtown Benton Harbor Arts District. It is a fresh juice bar and cafe whose menu is plant-based, forward foods, and cleaner, sustainable meats. Chef Audy is an herbalist and develops teas and plant medicines for her customers. Her cuisine specializes in creating bold, ethnic flavors from Mexico, Southeast Asia, West Indies, coastal and Southern Black American taste profiles. We introduce to you Chef Audy. We are so glad to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Your bio is extremely impressive, and I'm so excited to get into navigating and talking about your path. This is, again, it's amazing to have um, a person of color in this emerging field.
Thank you.
Um, So, this is April, and happy April to you and to our listeners. And this month is known as a celebratory time for Earth Day. This annual event is typically enjoyed by indulging in 420 or weed marijuana related products, as marijuana is derived from the earth. In the Black community, we have a speckled relationship with ganja. On one hand, many of our neighbors view it as a natural way to relieve stresses, never believing the former false narrative declaring ganja as a dangerous gateway drug. Too many of our youths were criminalized and commodified into the prison industrial complex held for decades for small amounts of this herb. On the other hand, our faith spaces decries involvement with the green, stating that it's sinful and illegal to partake of any drug, including the very natural marijuana. Um, I'm interested in what is the story of your initial relationship or upbringing or beliefs around this herb, marijuana?
Um, One of the things that we like to do, marijuana, I don't, not that I'm, marijuana was kind of a term that was brought about by the legal community, by the um, police and so the FBI, so to speak. We call it cannabis. That is the name of the plant. It is a plant. It grows from the earth. It grows from seed, and I learned from a very early age, as you had in my introduction, from my grandfather. My grandparents used to keep me when I was age 4 or 5, and my grandfather had the most beautiful garden, and it was all organic at that time. And organic has become this commodity now, when everything was organic back then. No pesticides. I was a pesticide. I got on my hands and knees and pulled the weeds and everything. But he instilled in me at an early age what food and how medicinal food can be, and herbs as well, just the stuff that we use in our everyday food practices. And so I learned at an early age to love food, the love of food from seed. He used to grow these beefsteak tomatoes, which are beautiful. And I remember one time he had picked one right off the vine and he handed it to me and he said, "Bite into this." And so I bit into it, and it was the most juicy, luscious, sweet, whatever adjective I can come up with. It was an amazing thing. And so from there, and just learning through self-study and otherwise through the years of what vegetables do, just like tomatoes, for instance, has lycopene. And I kind of know when my body needs that. And it's just something that helps your blood flow and things like that. And so as I started to get further along in life, I realized what herbs can do. And I came across the cannabis plant probably in my early teens. And I knew just from, the Don't Say No and all of these other campaigns that kind of lump marijuana into it. But I also know that what it does on a medicinal level. And so as I started getting old, when I got older and I started learning more and studying more about cannabis from its origins, and there's so many different strains out there that I am convinced God put on earth, um, because there's a cannabis strain that can treat everything from Alzheimer's to depression to my son has type 1 diabetes, and he doesn't mind if I talk about his condition. He was diagnosed at 11 months, and he's been a user of cannabis since he was 14. And his numbers, I didn't know then, but as we started getting along later in life, he told me what it does for his numbers, his glucose numbers. They come down. He's more even-minded. He's more steady-minded. And so when I started to really dig into cannabis and realize that I can grow a strain for people who are withering away because of cancer, or they don't have an appetite, or they can't sleep, and I can take this seed and I learned how to cultivate plants and vegetables from my grandfather. That's kind of how. So it was in a very early age that I got into it, and I guess I became obsessed with it because then I taught myself hydroponics, and that's another way to grow cannabis in water instead of soil.
Wow, I have never heard of a story like that. But, and I'll kind of share my background, but I love how you connected your knowledge of cannabis to growing and to the land,
Yes.
which we're not going to dive too deeply in this, but the power of having your own land and really working it, um, really working it. And it
Sure.
also speaks to the lack of knowledge or the lack of knowledge share when a younger generation does not have access to elders, but also does not have access to the land. So there can be healing that we have access to that we don't have access to because we don't own the land. That's kind of a powerful notion. I didn't.
Yeah,
Feel
yeah,
free.
yeah. You did. You said a mouthful. Now, I'm actually blessed to have been raised in Southwest Michigan, where Michigan in itself has amazing agriculture. And so I've kind of always been exposed to to me, it's just always kind of been normal to have a backyard garden. It's been normal there's friends of the family. It's actually a Black family that owned a blueberry farm. And so when you speak of the land, and when you speak of elders, and then when you have their children, you're as an elder, you work your land so that you can provide for your family, so that they don't necessarily have to work as hard and maybe go into other things. And so we have found a decline in the Black-owned farms. But when you speak of the land is rich. The land is rich in money. It's rich in power. It's rich in whatever those things that you feel like you need to go after. It's right there. And the soil, it is amazing to be able to hold the soil in your hand, and it's rich and it's luscious, and you put one little bitty seed in there, and you see, and it can grow into a tree. This one little seed, you speak of mustard seeds fade, and because of what it can become. It starts out this very small thing, but if you give love and you cultivate it, it just becomes this amazing thing that can help your family. It can feed your family, and it can help cure your family. And that's what cannabis can do.
Yes. So growing up, I'm actually from Virginia, and we did have land, and there were a few years, maybe two, where my father planted in the yard, and we had a beautiful garden. But that was only for about 2 years. However, we come from an extremely conservative Christian background. And so my entire life, I stayed away from the ganja. If I was at a party and somebody brought it out, I'm out the door because I didn't want to get arrested.
Yeah,
I in my community, we grew up in a way where there was a stigma or stereotype. You you don't want to hang with those people,
Hmm.
only low class people,
Right.
smoke weed. And so it was not until my graduate experience where I, had a few experiences with it, specifically when dealing with anxiety. But again, I grew up during I heard the message of just say no. I
Hmm.
was, I wanted to be a good Black man. So
Hmm.
I, steered away from anything that was illegal. And
Hmm.
again, there was this mindset that there were only low class people, only the low, partake of drugs. And so um, it sounds like your initial thoughts and interactions about cannabis were derived from the experience of having land, planting, and becoming knowledgeable because of your ancestry.
Hmm.
Whereas my um, beliefs were based upon mostly religious and social um, fears.
Hmm.
So I think that's very interesting, and I love that you come from a rich background, and that's part of your introduction into this
Hmm.
business.
Yeah, and I do want to stress though, I'm kind of like the black sheep in the whole belief lab, because this town is very small, but it does have many churches, very close knit, and so the stigma is kind of the same at what you were raised with. And I still have family members who have just kind of come into the understanding, and have really kind of changed their views, so to speak, because it was kind of like with yours, and then this whole stigma and then the religious aspect of it. But the more I was involved in it and the more that I've educated them on it, that even the most staunch relative, our most elder, has come to understanding that, okay, I do see where there is an upside to this, and especially when it comes from a medicinal aspect. So I did want to put that in there, that I still, family members, but they've come around. And I guess I'd like to maybe take a little credit for that, that they understand that there is a benefit and an upside to it.
That's awesome. Can you please tell us about your business and what services, products that you provide? I heard about, I read about the parent company, but there were also some interesting um, subsidiaries.
Hmm. Yeah, I through hydroponics and through that I grow herbs, medicinal herbs and savory herbs, and a lot of savory herbs are medicinal herbs in my cafe. And this has kind of been a work in progress, culminating from years of working in restaurants, and then I've owned a couple of restaurants before this one. I really wanted to put something in this town where people can land, particularly the locals. I'm actually a local in a tourist town. In the next month or so, we will probably quadruple in population, because we have beautiful beaches, and there's just a lot to people get away from the big city and they come to Benton Harbor and St. Joe and along the coast. But I want a place for the locals, and of course the tourists are welcome. But I want to find a place to come downtown, because we are gentrifying. And I wanted to make sure that someone who was born and raised in this town was still very present down here as it's making its changes. And and so I wanted to put all of those things that I've learned coming through the years, and I've actually had some health challenges myself. Some that really actually shocked me, and they were actually life threatening. But I wanted a place where people felt like, because I have some customers come in and like, I've never had a juice with just apples and oranges and carrots and ginger, and they liked it. And so I want to be able to have a place for people to land, learn about how these natural foods can benefit your body. One of my prized things in my cafe is a wall. It's a living wall where I'm actually planting. I have plant life growing on the wall, and I'll be utilizing those herbs and everything like that. So I do teas. I have people come in. It's allergy season. I put teas together for medicinal teas for that. It's cold and flu. I also do fresh juices and smoothies, but my food is also plant-based. I've developed a food where I can take a regular, say, favorite dish, say soul food. You might have your fried chicken, your greens, your sweet potatoes, and all of that, and I've turned it into a vegan alternative. And the way that I've done it, it's healthier, but the way that I've been able to spin and test kitchen it, that you really wouldn't know that you're eating all plant based. So we can still have all of our favorite foods that we all grew up as African Americans, Black Americans, but we can also do it without all of the fat and so the animal product that is very, very unhealthy for our people, our community. And so that is what Soul's Ground. So Soul's Ground is not necessarily a soul food, but it's food for the soul. And I source from a lot of our local farmers, so that I'm using food that is indigenous to our area, and the response has been thanks. The response has been amazing. My customer base, our teenagers to elders, Black, white, brown people are all coming in, and they're going out and they're coming back, and that is so important to me. So that means all of this work, and I've been through some stuff in this industry. All of it is culminated, and I'm in love. I'm in love. And cannabis is one of the herbs that I offer. I can put it in your food. So there are other ways that you can consume cannabis. You don't have to smoke it. You don't have to necessarily vape it. I can extract the THC, which are the active ingredients that kind of bring about the highs, or so to speak. And I can put it in your food, so it's going to make you feel a certain way, so you can still consume it without smoking it. So that helps take away some of the stigma too. And people aren't hanging out on the sidewalks or on the corners smoking or whatever. And because we have some, and that's another thing in this community, we have we have 2 dispensaries that are open with 3 others that will dispense cannabis, but 2 of them are going to be Black women owned. So not only do we there not only are there are very few Black women owned dispensaries in this country. We're about to have 2 Black women in one town within a 1.5 block radius. And I'll be doing some work with those dispensaries in terms of the food as well. So we are slowly turning the mindset of even the people who are just like, oh, cannabis, marijuana is just so it's not. It can help heal pretty much any ailment that is out there. And again, it's from the earth. It's from seed. It is from God. God put it here for us. I think Smoke said that if you see the movie, it's here for you and for me, and it's true. It is.
I love that. As I look at you and listen to you, I hear healing, and it reverberates, because it's not only healing from a medicinal perspective, but healing from a communal perspective with
Yes,
the
yes.
food, healing from a communal perspective, Black women, business,
Hmm.
um,
Yes.
in this community, healing from, you talk about, it's a your community has a lot of vacationers, and so I
Hmm.
think about you making a place. You said you went home to represent, and I just hear healing, and I also think of our my Blackness and connection to ancestry and ancestral
Hmm.
knowledge. And so
Yes.
that's another type of healing. So I'm just like bubbling over on the inside.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah. And that could be a whole nother subject. When we talk about our ancestors and how they utilized a lot of the same the cannabis, so to speak, and in rituals and everything, and how that played a part just in our earlier beliefs systems. So, but you're right, it's, and I love it because this community needed my particular community. We've gone through some things, as many communities do, But what it is doing is that, like I said, I love the fact that my cafe is a place where people can come. And and I'm already setting up events for our younger adults because they need to feel represented. They have a multitude of ideas. And so I'm also using my cafe as an event space for them to come and commune. Yes, and it's a beautiful thing. And so we've got my schedule is already starting to stack up with people who have found a place to come and settle. And there is healing in this community. We're very close knit. It's like, you can't necessarily come here and we'll see you. And if we don't necessarily know you, we're gonna be like, well, who your people are? In other words, because everybody knows everybody around here. So, if okay, well, you're a Robinson, okay, you're cool. Or you're a Peeples or you're a Yarborough or whatever the case may be. So that is one of the gifts I feel, and it was important because even though I had spent all those years in Chicago and had a rewarding career there, um, I knew that Souls Ground Foods was going to have to be born or given birth, here in my hometown on this soil. And so it's amazing the way that it's taken off and the way people respect, when I throw, because I do cannabis infusion parties and I have a partner that I do it with. And when we put it out there that we're about to do a party, the response is enormous because they know what they're going to get. They're going to get a good time, good food, and the vibe is just it's going to be totally on point. So I'm in a really good place now, and I'm happy that in this time, cannabis has taken another look. Cannabis is gaining another respect, even from your most staunch church community. They are understanding, and then economically, what it can do for this community as well. We have an excise tax that's 10% that comes off of every single purchase
Wow.
that is made in these dispensaries. That goes to our roads, our schools, our infrastructure, the things that we want to put together. So there's also an economic benefit to that for the community wherever you have legalized marijuana. And so I feel like I've been poised from a very young age to be right here and now, where cannabis is really taking a front seat and making sure that our young Black men and women who have been incarcerated can also get in on the game, so to speak. It's a little difficult. You still have to have a lot of money. These big corporations are coming in, but there is a social equity program that is set forth for disenfranchised communities. And Benton Harbor is one of them, where you can be just an ordinary citizen and get into cannabis without necessarily going through all of the red tape that you would have to go through your states and stuff if you're a bigger supplier. And one of the things is you can get a discount on your licensing if you have been a marijuana. If you have a marijuana charge, they will actually give you 25% off on, so there are some benefits. If you've had a cannabis charge or a marijuana charge, you get 25% off under the social equity program. So there's a lot of benefits to getting into this. But again, the market is starting to slow down. Because everybody, I think Mike Tyson is getting ready to have a strain come here in Michigan, and some of the other rappers and Black entrepreneurs are looking at Michigan to come and start up. But those of us who have been here and have paid our dues are making sure that we're part of this as well. And it's because of the acceptance.
That is amazing. Don't want to belabor the point, but I do want to make this point,
Mhm.
because I hear this. You've said a lot, and I hear sense of agency in one aspect where we can can take control of our health
Mhm.
by changing our diets and using your products
Mhm.
instead of or in conjunction with traditional Western medicine. I'm not gonna say traditional,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
unfortunately we don't see much representation for BIPOC Black folks. Um,
Mhm.
but we can use this herb to take a sense of agency. And I also love that um, it sounds like you are empowered through your experience and through your knowledge, and you are empowering youths and others
Mm-hmm.
through your communal space. And so I just hear
Yes.
agency
Thank
and
you.
growth and development, but also
Mm-hmm.
you're planting seeds. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
important to me, and I'm sure our viewers as well, from folks who come from, who are marginalized in a Western context, even though there
Mm-hmm.
are more of us on this earth
Mm-hmm. Yes,
than
absolutely.
Europeans.
Uh-huh.
But um, but the empowerment is an agency. Those of us who
Mm-hmm.
are usually disempowered in a Western context. So I love that, and this is when I wanted to bring out that point because many feel again disempowered. Many who are degreed or who may not be degreed find it challenging during this time, even this time, to
Mm-hmm.
have jobs. They find it
Mm-hmm.
challenging to deal with health issues, and people are at a loss. But you have touched, through your experience, by your sharing, several points of empowerment and for our group. And I really just I wanted to point that out: agency and empowerment.
Sure.
I love this story, and I love the energy that you're bringing to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And
Hmm. Oh,
no,
go
I'm
for it.
sorry. No, I was gonna say, one of the things this is a new industry, and we are finding, a lot of people, just like after COVID, and people started coming back to work, and then you found some industries saying, "Oh, where are the workers?" Well, the workers had an opportunity to get educated, to learn other things, spend time with their children, and gone on. And there's a lot of opportunities in the cannabis field, because now you can make not only a great living wage, but many places they pay your benefits, and you're learning this new craft, and so it is giving our youth, our young adults, an opportunity to not only get into this burgeoning uh, new industry, but there's so many ways. You can kind of come in. You don't necessarily have to know how to grow. You don't necessarily have to have the money to open a dispensary or a grow house or anything. You can kind of come into the industry if you're a graphic artist, if you know how to make art, if you're a painter, if you know how to make, you can create all kinds of like cannabis things that are related to cannabis. There's like little sheets where you can roll your cannabis on. People make those little trays and they paint them, and little, yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. So there is an opportunity for us, particularly those of us who are of color, to find our way in this industry and still it'll still be beneficial for us, and we can kind of create our own paths as well. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome.
Sorry.
I appreciate that. So, in this new industry, um, and you have been in the food industry and cannabis and growing, um, what obstacles have you had to overcome being a Black woman in this new industry, which is dominated by
Mm-hmm.
men
Mm-hmm.
in the weed
You
business?
know, yeah, and that, I think it's more or less women, not Black women. Now, particularly here, I have garnered the respect of some pretty big companies, like, especially those companies that are coming from out of town. When Michigan, particularly our town, opted in for legal, you had all of these companies, hundreds of millions of dollars, who were on the outskirts and they're looking for the inside. And so I have been contacted, and that's kind of the work that I do as a consultant. But overall, as a Black woman or just a woman, there is still, at the end of the day, I guess, maybe a trust issue that somehow, as a woman or as a Black woman, we don't necessarily, I don't know, contain or have what we need to say be a manager or in a higher position in a lot of these grow houses. I had been promised, so many positions from general manager to the grow house to general manager of the dispensary. And so what I have noticed is that a lot of these companies, yes, they are white owned. And even though they're coming into a predominantly Black community, and there have been some promises made, at the end of the day, they will still bring in people from the outside. Now, some of these grow houses, or one of the grow houses that was here, promised the people of this community that they would hire from within the community, from the grow techs to, again, to the administrative. So I think one of the challenges is that there is still, I think there's a trust issue, that because, and notwithstanding, there's a lot of greenhorns, there's a lot of people who don't understand cannabis or know how to grow, or the ins and outs. But at the end of the day, it is still a business that can be learned. Everybody, even the people who own these businesses, are still learning. It's because it is so new. So one of the challenges that I have met, is just the perspective, not even necessarily from a woman, but just, I think because of that, and one of the major players here in town, there are very few women, white or Black, who have the positions of, I don't want to necessarily say authority, but leadership, and have the title of general manager. Um, and I know that I have the credentials. Not only do I have the background in terms of the education, but I also have the background in terms of growing. But when it comes to that precipice, and maybe there are shareholders, I don't know, who are weary, um, investors who are weary, but that is one of the things that I guess I've encountered initially. But because our town is so unique, we just had another dispensary open. She's medicinal right now, but she's going to have a rec license soon, which is legal, which means that she can sell legal, and so everybody can come in and buy. Is a Black woman. There's another woman who was born and raised here in Benton Harbor as well, who's going to be opening up a dispensary around the corner. So the tempo is a little different here in Benton Harbor, because we actually have Black-owned women dispensaries. So there is a different mentality as far as that is concerned. But I think overall, the overall spectrum is that it kind of just shows itself in the industry itself, is the challenges. Maybe it's a trust. Maybe because we're women, we don't have or know the knowledge or whatever. But every Black woman that I know can run it. So, it's just, I think those would be the challenges that are faced by Black women, and maybe me in the beginning. But again, I guess I come from a different perspective because there is a different understanding in this town alone. But, I think a lot of it has to do with, there is a race issue. I don't want to say that it's a race issue, but oftentimes that's why most of us are still incarcerated, because it's a race issue. So, but I think we're slowly overcoming that. And the industry is recognizing that we do bring a lot to the table, and we can be more than beneficial to your company. And if you don't want to hire us, guess what? We'll just go and create our own, and then we're gonna go in competition against you. And I don't think you're gonna want that. So they really should probably get hip to it, because we're a dynamite people, and when we put our head to it, and we're creative as well. And so I'm excited about what's going on in our community. We needed it. Our community was built on the auto industry, and when that went away for many, many decades, we had strife, just like urban strife in many communities. And so our community, whether you have the church people who are just so against it, who are starting to change, our community needed this industry. And our roads are being rebuilt. We have a lead issue in our pipes that's being taken care of. And the money is here now. The money is here for our community, and it can be for other communities if they really start to look at what cannabis can do for their community. And it comes through those taxes, and ultimately, I see a change. I see a change all across the board.
I love how you talked about race as part of, as a factor, um, because it's not only in your industry. And one of the reasons why, we wanted to do this show, and last month's show, we featured Black women businesses again, is because our constituents, again, are LGBT, people of color, and we want to showcase Black and brown people as entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
um, as representation that we don't have to work for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
We are under recognized, we are overlooked. I have a background in capital markets. I
Mm.
have multiple degrees, and I see
Wow.
multiple degreed people who have been very successful in their careers, having to prove and reprove and try to prove and just not be accepted uh,
Mm-hmm.
by white people running companies. Or
Mm-hmm.
racism is when,
Mm.
especially when you have experience doing something and leading, etc., it does not seem to be good enough. So what I want to our listeners to hear is that you can do this on
Mm-hmm.
your own with your community.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that is the option, to step outside of a job and actually be empowered, empower yourself and
Mm-hmm.
build your own, or partner with another Black or brown person
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and build
Mm-hmm.
your own, and be
Absolutely.
competition instead of being an employee. So
Boom.
I just wanted to, when you talked about uh, possible possible discrimination,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how you overcame that, and how you didn't say this is the end of the road. You built your own.
There you go. Absolutely. 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 And there is power in numbers, and there are a lot of collectives. And I've noticed that, especially in a lot of Black communities, forming collectives, whether it's thought, whether it's ideas, come together. You'd be surprised how many like-minded people. And we do have we're low on capital, but if we put our capital together, we can buy whole blocks back. So the sky is the limit, and to be empowered, excuse me, is an amazing thing. And that's another thing that I feel like we're on the verge of. And um and it, and it feels good. It does.
I'm loving this conversation. Again, you've made me excited.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions, and I'm trying to decide which one should we go to. But what about this one? What have you learned about yourself through the entrepreneurial process? And I ask that as one who has had businesses and who will again, um, that process will teach you a lot.
Ooh, it
What have
sure
you
will.
learned that you want to share?
I have learned to be extremely resilient. When I was pursuing the restaurant chef, and this was when I had a whole career in the legal field in Chicago for 19 years. So I had the 4-bedroom house and the bonuses and all of that stuff. But when the bottom dropped out of the economy in 2008, and my firm handed me a pretty good separation package, I was actually able to take some time and hone in and say, well, you know what? I want to get into this food. I'm going into it full time. And I've learned through that process how humbling it is. I have slept on as a 40 something year old, or what, 50, dang near 50 years, sleeping on floors. Um, and I would, like, in Atlanta, I stayed with a woman that I had met, and basically, pursuing that. So you do give up. You have to determine you've got what you want to give up. I gave up, not so much give up, but I relinquished that for a minute to live very minimally, in pursuing this, and the perseverance. So I learned that I don't have a limitation in my perseverance. And the deeper you get into it, you don't mind sleeping on floors as a grown woman after you've slept in a beautiful, comfortable, pillow top bed. When you're pursuing something that you really believe in and you really want to go after, and so it's with those that led me to the foundation. I mean, I've lived in a one bedroom apartment with just my books and my laptop, and that's all I needed when I was receiving Soul's Ground Foods from God and from the universe and from my ancestors who pass along, my crafts to me. So, you learn how to live a certain way and appreciate the things that you have, knowing that it's gonna pay off. If you,
Mm.
I am such a, if don't ever, ever, ever give up. I was a catering chef, and just a quick story. I was cooking on a beach on these butane stoves, and I had the stove blow up in my face, literally blow up in my face, and I was severely burned. If I wasn't for my glasses, I would probably not even be able to see, or we'd be speaking right now. But I used the power of what I was receiving in that time from Source Ground Foods, the natural healing. I used my own salves and my own herbs to heal. And maybe a month and a half later, my face started scabbing, but it went away and it started clearing up. And people were like, how? What? It's just that right thinking. It's the right mind. It's giving reverence to God. It's thanking God for the God in you. And you're using, you use that as the power to continue. So I have become one of the strongest people that I know, physically, mentally, spiritually, from this path, from my journey. And now I'm here, and probably within the next 3 or 4 years, I'm done. I have lived, I have learned, I have executed, and now within the next 4 years, I want to travel all over the world and eat the food that to eat the food that I've taught myself to cook. I want to actually go to those countries, and that is my intention. My intention is I want to put as many stamps on my passport as I can. And that all just came from living for the past 12, 13 years, living very minimally while I received this. And now I'm giving it back to my community. They're receiving it. And it's been an amazing trip.
That is beautiful.
Thank
That
you.
is beautiful. Um, Challenging, but rewarding in that you healed. You used your own products and helped
Yes.
heal you through the process. And
Mm-hmm.
and you also spoke about being in a certain place and kind of having to humble yourself to manifest something larger
Mm-hmm.
than the former.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I'm sure it didn't feel good, but I'm sure like now that
Mm-hmm.
as you spoke about growing and the schedule stacking up, that has to
Mm-hmm.
feel amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a full life, full experience, and then experience born out of the God in you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the pastors in Chicago, she was part of the New Thought, Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, rest her soul. And I went to Pastor Wright's church, Jeremiah A. Wright Jr., Trinity United Church of Christ. That's where I really was able to um, learn so much about um, myself then as a Christian, but also empowerment. And one of the things that Reverend Dr. Coleman said is it works if you work it. And that's why I named the name of my food truck was Work It Food Truck, because I had worked the heck out of so many situations in this industry. When I had my food truck, I called it the Work It Food Truck because that was culminating, So it does work if you work it. It's very simple. That's something else that is a very simple philosophy that I've carried with me on this journey. If you work this thing, it's going to work. It's going to work. I'm living proof of that. I've got a whole nother story about a heart attack that we'll talk about some other time. But it's because of this right mind and this right way of living that I've been able to survive some pretty life threatening things and come out it so thankful that I'm able to still not only be here but to pass along what it is that I've gained.
So, and this has been such a rich conversation. It's been lovely journeying or navigating through your journey, how you started with your grandparents, um, the space of acknowledgement of you enjoy growing and that process and learning and growing, connecting that to cooking and cannabis, and then you talk about some of the shifts in your career and life. What final message would you like to leave for those who are tuned in today?
If you find yourself, there's something in you that you want to do, whether it's art, whether it's food, whether it's if you want to build websites, whatever it is, and you feel it so deep in your soul that you just do it. Don't go through your life with any regrets. And that's one thing I knew that I had to do. I knew that if I didn't do this, there's no way I would have been able to go on to my glory, and not be able to say, you know what, I did a pretty good job, and I don't want to regret not pursuing whatever it is that was in me. And so that's what I'd like to stress to anybody. If you have something in you and and you feel it welling up in you, you might even lose friends and family over it. You just might, and that's okay. Because at the end of that road is going to be something extremely marvelous that you have done, that you have built, that you have sacrificed for, and it'll be all worth it. So stick to whatever it is that you want to do and do it, and try to live with no regrets, and it'll work if you work it.
That is powerful. Pursue your dream. That's what I hear. Pursue your
Yes.
dream with
Don't give up.
diligence and
Don't.
endurance.
Exactly. Do not give up. Please don't give up.
That is that's so wonderful. During this transformational time, you did mention that a point of transformation in your life was during the 2008 market crash. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're at this pivotal time, the pandemic. There's so many things going on with economic markets, war, um, employment situations. It seems like it is a time for
Mm-hmm.
other shifts and transformations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to say thank you for your words of wisdom. Thank you
Oh, you're
for your
welcome.
transparency and your open
Mm-hmm.
heart, and just joining FLoAD conversations today. We
Mm-hmm.
really want to impress upon those who are here watching, listening, participating. Follow, pursue your dream. There
Please,
is something
yes.
great inside of you, and
Yes.
manifest it. Um, if you can't do it alone, find a partner,
Yes.
participate in a collective.
Mm-hmm.
We want to know, where can our audience members find your business? Would you mind giving us your website or websites?
I'm building a website right now, but you can find me on Facebook and on Instagram at Souls Ground Cafe. And and then I'm slowly putting up, I'll have products, and I'm going to have an online store. So I will make my herbs and things like that available. if you were ever in this part of town or this part of the state, Southwest Michigan, we have wonderful beaches. Come on down to Benton Harbor, Michigan. We're like so we're right here, but we're right off the lake. And so you can find Sauce Grand Cafe on Facebook and on Instagram.
Yes. So we are again elated to have you with us. I want to say thank you for
Thank you for having
participating
me.
as our conversation guest
Thank you for
partner.
having me. Mm-hmm.
And we want to thank you, our audience, for joining us again on this episode. Please join us next month on the fourth Thursday of the month for our next conversation. We look forward to seeing you. Be blessed. Go in peace. Have a great night.
Thank you. You as well.